In Ukraine's frozen east, roads have turned to tunnels, anti-drone netting offering the closest thing to protection from Russian attacks. This is the part of the Donetsk region that Ukraine still holds and that Russia wants to be given as part of any peace. And with Russia's recent advances, slow and costly as they may be, Ukrainian police are trying to get civilians to safety. Like 97-year-old Katerina. I won't go now, she says. Maybe another time, not now. I don't want to leave my home. It's not a home anymore, she's told. These the conditions under which first Vladimir Putin and this week again President Trump have urged Ukraine to hold elections. The constitution precludes them under martial law. But on his way home from Italy last night, President Zelenskyy said he'd be willing to change the law and go to the polls within 90 days, but only if the United States and Europe provided security guarantees to ensure voting could be done safely. Polls suggest Ukrainians themselves are overwhelmingly against holding wartime elections.
When the country is at war, so many men and women fighting, so many people having left and part of our territory occupied, elections cannot be conducted the way they should be.
What Trump wants is his business. I support holding elections at the end of martial law, after our victory, as it should be.
So if this is simply Zelenskyy calling Washington and Moscow's combined bluff, to what end?
I think that what he was trying to do is to show willingness for Ukraine to demonstrate its readiness to fulfill a number of democratic procedures. The problem is that Russia is not showing any willingness to achieve a ceasefire as a preconditions for any political conversation that could include holding elections in Ukraine.
Far from a ceasefire, Ukraine's military says Russia has today launched a large-scale mechanized assault on its positions in the north of the strategic town of Pokrovsk. These said to be images from Ukrainian drones trying to fend it off. Russian battlefield pressure combining with American political pressure. With Donald Trump reportedly delivering his latest deadline to Zelenskyy, a deal by Christmas. Zelenskyy says he'll send Trump his latest ceasefire proposal today. One drawn up after his latest round of crisis talks with European leaders this week. Those leaders due to hold more virtual talks tomorrow and an in-person leaders summit on Monday. The Prime Minister today seeming to acknowledge the difficulty of the task in the face of a US president who openly derides them as weak and their countries as decaying.
On the question of Europe and President Trump's comments, what I see is a strong Europe, united behind Ukraine and united behind our long-standing values of freedom and democracy.
Further evidence today of Russia's assault on Ukrainian infrastructure. Efforts to repair at least one of the power stations hit in recent weeks. But more crucial still for Ukraine, even in the grip of winter, than power and heat, is the support of the US president. The fear here is that that may have fractured beyond repair.
Well, our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Porrick O'Brien, is in Odessa in Ukraine.
One of the big sticking points to any sort of negotiated deal to bring an end to this was always going to come down to how unpalatable the idea is for Ukrainians of giving up land that the Russians took off them during the full-scale invasion. Most Ukrainians we talk to cannot entertain the idea and resent it all being framed in some sort of, real estate deal. We've spent the last 3 days in Kherson, and that is a place where all of this becomes very much crystallized. Here's why. You may remember at the start of the full-scale invasions, the Russians took Kherson city. Then in November of that year, the Ukrainians pushed the Russians out of the city onto the left bank of the Dnipro River, and that is where the Russians still occupy. And from that place, they are raining down death every single day on the civilian population of Kherson. Some 300 Russian drones are launched into the Kherson region every day. There is a red zone in that city, which is one of the most frightening places I have ever worked in. It's been completely emptied of civilians. If you're walking out on the street there, you are probably a target of a Russian drone. And one man in particular really brought it home to me. He is the director of the theatre in Kherson. son. And his home is on the left bank of the river, is in now that occupied Russian land. He can almost see his house from where he now lives on the Ukrainian side of the city. Here's how he put it to me. He said, look, Borek, I raised 5 children in that house. My heart and my soul are in that house, and my heart and soul are not bargaining chips in some sort of geopolitical gamble. Also, talking to Ukrainian soldiers and their families, they talk about the amount them and their loved ones have had to sacrifice in this fight. One Ukrainian soldier put it to me like this. He said, look, the blood of my comrades fallen in arms are soaked into that soil. So that soil for him is not up for grabs.
Porrick O'Brien, and there'll be more from him in Kherson next week. Well, earlier I spoke to the Russian ambassador to the UK, Andrei Kelin, and I began by asking him whether, as Donald Trump says, Russia is fine with the US peace plan.
I haven't seen the peace plan. That is not true to presuppose that it is in the papers, in the newspapers, but I can't imagine several parts of it because it is understandable for us. So this is not about a simple ceasefire. It should be a comprehensive long-term solution for everything. It is not for only Ukraine. Security guarantees should be given to Russia as well. Security guarantees should be given to all European countries over here. It is an issue of NATO, of course, should be resolved once and forever.
I mean, you have always said you want a comprehensive plan, but Trump is clearly impatient and he wants some progress quickly. Now, there was a 28-point plan. I don't know whether you know what was in it. And then there was a new version that he talked about last week. What do you understand his plan to be?
His plan to be. Definitely it should not be a deal. At the moment we have to talk about surrender because Kyiv should think not about the deal, but definitely the situation on the ground, situation in economics of Ukraine, situation in Europe where there is no more money, spare money for Ukraine. They put Kyiv in condition when they have to think how to save the state, not to be a failed.
So you're saying it should be a surrender?
It should be definitely a certain surrender.
I mean, that is not the basis for peace talks, is it? Peace talks have to be about a deal and a compromise, not a surrender. Nobody wants to surrender.
A deal is a different thing. A deal when there is a certain balance of on the field, but there is no balance on the field.
You think you're winning?
There is a winning. We are in the winning situation definitely because the front line is moving very quickly.
Very quickly. I mean, very quickly is a big claim, isn't it? It's actually moved very slowly. Over 4 years.
It is in your newspapers. But in fact, what is happening is that it is becoming quicker and quicker.
So Trump's talking nonsense then? If he says Russia's fine with a deal. I mean, you're sounding like you're nowhere near a deal.
Expectations, of course, to have it as quick as possible. And I wouldn't say that we are alien to this expectation because we would like to finish it by diplomatic efforts and also as quick as possible. But of course, it will be on our terms.
Right. Well, what are your terms?
Terms has been laid down by President a year ago, and we do not change our positions. It is well known, and simply do not repeat what has been said many times.
So, I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? You have been consistent in your message, and you're saying Russia's position has not changed.
Exactly.
And will not change.
Will not change. No.
Is that why Russia seems to be stepping up what the British government regards increasingly as hybrid war in Europe?
We can say absolutely the same about European efforts, about British efforts.
I'm sure you can, but you're accepting that it happens.
No, it happens that everybody is doing what it is in effort. So the hybrid war, which is waged against Russia, is very active.
In that case, if you say Russia is under attack in a hybrid war in terms of surveillance and cyber, you're doing it to us as well, aren't you?
I do not know. Simply, this is not my cup of tea.
You know, you're very keen to say what Britain is doing when you don't
what we are doing,
actually know the detail of that. I'm just asking you what's Russia doing.
Krishnan, we are talking about conflict in Ukraine. I just laid it out, the situation on the ground in Ukraine. Ukraine has, and you ask me why. Because Ukraine has no more manpower, they have no more reserves. That's the main question, because, and it's important because it is important. We have huge reserves and manpower.
Now you say this is not about a ceasefire and it's not about a deal. If Zelenskyy were to say ceasefire and I'll call elections, He's saying he's prepared to hold elections.
Yesterday, for the first time.
Yes. I mean, is that something Russia would consider? Because you want him out, and you believe he would lose an election. So if there's an opportunity for an election, is that something Russia would consider having a ceasefire for?
Presidential elections should have been happened a year and a half ago. So at the moment he is illegal. And we are not very eager to go into the agreement or a treaty with a person who is illegal, who is going to sign it. We can negotiate with him, but the person who is going to sign it should be absolutely legal and has the support of people in his country.
The other very interesting thing that's come out of America in the last few days, which is their national security strategy. It's quite extraordinary as a document. Your spokesman in Moscow, Mr. Peskov, welcomed it and said that there are aspects to this that are in line with Russia's.
First, it is a refusal refusal of supremacy of the United States all over the world. Hegemony, as was always the main card of the previous administration. The other thing is that no more enlargement of NATO, which is important. It is now in the concept, that's right. And a third thing is that they stand not for confrontation with Russia, but for strategic stability.
I mean, he is now saying Europe is weak. Is that a Russian strategic success? Is that what you have achieved?
It is just a result of development, of liberal development in Europe. It is, I wouldn't say that we have contributed much because recently our relations with Europe deteriorated very strongly.
The thing that has caused a lot of anger in Europe is also his talk about civilizational erasure. Do you think he's right about that?
I have no comment on that. Europe is not our partner at the moment at all. It is adversarial.
When President Putin said, "We don't want war with Europe, but we're ready for war," what did that mean?
President Putin has said many times that we do not want and we have no plans, no intentions and no reason to have war with Europe and with NATO. But the situation is that here in Europe, the leaders, those who are speaking about the war in 2 years, they simply do not hear it. They do not listen to what President is saying.
But do you understand why people don't believe Putin? Because so many things he said over the years turned out not to be true.
The issue of believe or not believe,
well, it's quite important,
of black and white, is an American concept.
He's a man who said he wasn't going to annex Crimea, and he annexed Crimea. He said he wasn't going to invade Ukraine, he invades Ukraine. So trust is a huge problem when it comes to believing what President Putin says.
Do you believe your own politicians when they're saying that we have that?
So you're agreeing with me?
I agree.
You can't believe what a politician says.
Do you believe your Minister of Finance who has said there was a gap, enormous gap in the budget, and turned out to be no gap in the budget?
So you don't believe Putin either?
I don't believe to your politician either. So the question of belief or non-belief should be resolved in negotiations.
Ambassador, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time. And you can watch the full version of that interview on the latest episode of The Forecast on our website, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Kathy.
Thanks, Krish. Well, in Washington, President Trump is marching on with his Ukraine peace plan. Here's our US editor, Anushka Astana. Anushka.
So, look, in truth, the conversations I'm having here in Washington, D.C. have echoes of what you have just heard from the Russian ambassador. They don't use the word surrender. Someone I was talking today says credit is given to Ukraine for defending itself so far. But the reality is that the U.S. does not want to offer any more, and they do not think that Ukraine can win this militarily. In fact, one source I was speaking to thinks that Russia would more than happily carry on with this. Even if it's grinding, even if it's slow and soldiers are dying, they think it suits Russia to have what they call a frozen conflict, because while that is happening, no one is talking about the possibility, for example, of Ukraine joining NATO. Those sort of conversations would be diminishing. Some of this Donald Trump is saying out there on the record. He made clear yesterday that he does not think that Ukraine has the upper hand, and he is not prepared to give Ukraine the money that would give it the upper hand. All of this is worrying, officials back in the UK who I also have been speaking to. They are worried that the money is going to run out and it's going to be harder and harder harder to give Ukraine what it needs to defend itself. We've had a succession of British ministers here this week. John Healey, the Defence Secretary today, the Foreign Secretary on Monday. The conversations have gone straight to Ukraine. They have flattered the US, but they are clearly very worried about the current situation.
Anushka, thanks very much.